Right, should we ask some questions, Benjamin?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Catriona, what's the first book you remember reading and enjoying?
Oh, so there's probably a boring true answer, which is something like Angelina Ballerina, which, if you're not familiar with it, is about a ballet dancing mouse. But probably a more interesting answer, in terms of a significant book in my reading history, is Charmed Life by Diana Wynne Jones. Which basically, when I was a kid, I would only read books about animals. I thought all books that had people in were deeply dull. This despite having not read any books with people in. So my mum used to get me books from the library sometimes, and she brought home Charmed Life because she thought it was about a cat. And I was like, okay, I'm on board, sign me up. Started reading it. Becomes clear very quickly that it's actually about a boy whose nickname is Cat. His name is Eric Chant. But so amazing is Diana Wynne Jones that even though it only takes a couple of lines for this to become clear, I was already hooked by that point. And so that book was basically my gateway into fantasy and my gateway into realizing that books with people in could be interesting and fun.
So cool.
So what was it about animals that made you sort of that you were obsessed with as a child? Like, did you like?
It might have been that I didn't really like people. I was a very shy, withdrawn child, and I was bullied. So I probably was just like, I mean, animals in real life aren't that nice either. But maybe it was a sort of safety thing. I mean, I did cross over into fantasy while still remaining with animals by reading Redwall. So
I was just about to say Redwall. That's wicked.
Yeah, I loved Redwall. Obviously, I had Sylvanian families, the little little animal dolls, and I used to make them little sort of tunics and jerkins and give them
like
swords. Yeah. So obviously you don't get Sylvanian family swords, so I had to borrow my brother's Playmobil swords, which actually fit perfectly in their little hands. Top tip, if I don't know who that would be useful for, but yeah,
everyone.
So I made them cosplay as Redwall characters, basically.
That's so cool.
That is actually legitimately cool.
Where do the Chronicles of Narnia sit in this sliding scale of death to people up the animals?
I mean, I loved Narnia, but I was a little bit unnerved by. My favorite Narnia book was always The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which correct. I mean is just correct, yeah. But I remember, that way that you don't realize consciously when you're a kid, the kind of propaganda that's embedded in those books. And I remember in the last battle, enough of the subtextual stuff. I mean, it's not very subtextual, to be honest, at that point. It's literally just revelation. But that book creeped me out a lot, and I hated it. And it was partly because of the bit where the donkey is dressed up in the lion skin, which makes not much sense in the actual context of the story, and then you realize it's it's all kind of biblical stuff. But
I had almost exactly the same reaction to the last battle as a kid. Just this almost like revulsion, like I recoiled from the book.
Yeah, it made me feel nauseous. I didn't know exactly why. I just knew that I just wanted to pretend that the series ended before that, basically.
I think for me, because I went to a Catholic primary school, for me it was like, well, at least this time there's a donkey that's wearing a cool outfit.
You're some kind of like closet Eeyore fan. What's going on?
Not closet, mate. Eeyore, like, we're going to get into this.
Oh, wow.
Eeyore has the same voice actor as Optimus Prime. You can't argue with that. That's fact.
Wow, that's a good fact. I did
Peter
not know
Cullen.
that fact. Wow.
He also makes all the noises the Predator makes. Look him up, everyone. Everyone go home and look up Peter Cullen.
That is quite the portfolio of work. Wow.
I feel like I stepped on a donkey-shaped landmine there.
Listen, bitch. Eeyore is coming.
Oh.
I need to move this on. I must. I'm being outed. Right. What gives you satisfaction while you're writing?
I guess there's two things. One is kind of when drafting. So when drafting, if I think of a line of dialogue that is very right for a character to the point where it feels like they're actually saying it rather than that I'm making it up. That is a really lovely feeling. And then also when revising, because that's what I spend most of my time doing, I never write something correctly the first time. When you've got a really knotty plot problem and then you're usually out for a walk or doing something completely different from writing and you suddenly go, that's it, and it makes everything make sense. That's the best feeling of writing for me.
It's so interesting that you went straight to drafting there. So there's not like a moment whilst it's coming out of you that is satisfying.
So when I say drafting, I mean sort of writing a first draft.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Right. Okay. I thought.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
But actually, I find revision much more satisfying. So I find it the process of kind of fixing stuff and making it all eventually make sense. Much more satisfying.
I'm so rubbish at that bit. Genuinely can't do it. Need to have it beaten into me.
I am still drafting the novel that I wrote like almost a year ago now. I'm on maybe the 8th draft or something. It's taking bloody ages. I just can't believe how long it's taking me to do it. Yeah.
I mean, it takes as long as it takes. That's it. I think I'm okay at revision and redrafting, but it's only because I have to be, because my first drafts are always just a complete mess.
I think it's a good thing to understand that your first drafts are pretty invariably quite shit. Like it's necessary. Like you and it's not. I say that like I've just come up with it. Like virtually everyone who's any good at it says that.
Not me though, right?
Yeah, so I think you've
I'm
got
fine.
I think you're in good company there. Lovely.
What is your favourite novel?
No.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah.
You have 5 seconds to comply.
Oh God. Or all of the novels will be destroyed. That's some kind of weird survivor for novels there. So a lot of my favorites are parts of series. So, and I don't want to nominate an entire series. So, for example, like really formative ones are Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Robin Hood, Realm of the Elderlings. But if I had to pick a standalone, I would probably pick The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. Which I don't know. Have you read it? I can quickly summarize.
I have indeed.
I can summarize the concept
for
people who haven't read it. Basically, we receive a signal from another planet that appears to demonstrate the existence of intelligent life on that planet. And before NASA or ESA or anyone official can get their act together, the Jesuits decide to send a mission to this planet. And it goes about as well as you might expect. And I love the way the book is told in 2 timelines. So one timeline is when the sole survivor of this mission, a priest called Emilio, has returned to Earth, and he is physically, emotionally, spiritually destroyed. And that timeline follows another priest trying to get the truth out of him about what actually happened on the planet. And the other timeline starts when the signal's received at the Arecibo telescope, and kind of follows the crew being put together and what actually happens. And I hesitate to say I recommend it to people because it's extremely painful. Horrible things happen to really lovely characters, but it's very immersive. The characters are so real. The alien societies are really nicely drawn. It's beautifully written. It's just a wonderful book.
It's a fantastic book. That's a really, really good choice. I like it. I like it a lot. She had a background in technical writing, I think, from the last time I was thinking about this book.
Yeah, and she also has a PhD in anthropology, which you can kind of tell from from the way that she builds the sort of 2 distinct alien societies.
There's a deep understanding about how things fit together.
Mm-hmm.
It's always so interesting to see those things at work, like that example, or Tolkien being a linguist and it meaning that book is just full of languages. I love that part of someone, even though it's not the training to write, it has to inform it because it's such a part of them. I think that's cool.
So without intending to skip over, really sort of diving deep on the Sparrow there, because I also love that. You're the first guest that we've had that's mentioned Robin Hobb.
Oh, really?
And I legitimately love those books to death. Like I think I had to buy a new copy of Assassin's Apprentice because it died in my hands.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it just fell apart.
Yeah. Same here. They are part of my soul, those books. Yeah.
This
And
is
they kind
Hitchhiker's
of
Guide to Erasure.
those are also a part of my soul, just a different part. And the thing with Robin Hobb is those books have kind of followed me through my whole life, basically, just because of the timing of when they've come out. So I read the Farseer trilogy when I was a sort of preteen to teen, and then because there's been sort of gaps between when she's released each trilogy within the series, it's just been something that I've come back to again and again, and the characters grow older and they change, and you grow older and change, and it's such a rich experience. And I don't think I've read characters that are as real to me as Fitz and the Fool in particular. It's just I can't even talk about how much those characters mean to me, because I'll probably get really emotional. And
I would fully second that. Like, I don't think any characterization has made me cry as much as Fitzgerald Farseer.
Yeah, he's so frustrating sometimes in the way that real people are frustrating, but he's fantastic. I can't believe that no one else has mentioned Robin Hobb. I think she's weirdly underrated for someone who is, I'm sure sells a lot of books and is very respected in the fantasy community, but I think she's still under-recognized.
I fully agree. I remember when there was a reprinting of one of her, I can't remember which trilogy it was, but it featured a quote from George Martin about it, sort of endorsing the book, and it was Robin Hobb's books are Diamonds in a Sea of Zircons, and it's spot on. I think nobody else is doing it to the level that she's doing it. And
right. I got so into her, and then I started trying to read other epic fantasy, thinking it would be like Robin Hobb, and it's incredibly rare to find anyone who does it even half as well as she does.
I made the terrible error of reading David Eddings after reading Robin Hobb, and it was a slog.
See, I haven't actually read David Eddings, so you're saying that's okay.
Well, I don't want to piss off David Eddings.
We're so sorry, David. We know you're a regular listener.
Yeah.
Just throw it away. Just go and reread Robin Hobb.
Yeah, that's a good decision in any circumstances. Yeah.
Right, before you start insulting any other big players.
That's great.
Yeah. Sorry, Dave. Right. Do you listen to music when you're writing? And if you do, what do you listen to?
I don't. I'm one of those people that, especially if it's music with lyrics, it gets in my head and I would end up just like typing the lyrics or being influenced too much by the words. I do make playlists for my books though. So usually when I'm brainstorming a book to start with, I'll put together a playlist of songs that usually either remind me of the characters or sometimes even have a sort of plot arc in them. In the order of where the songs are and what the kind of, it's usually more of an emotion arc, and then I have to fill in the plot afterwards, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But that's part of my process for every book I've written so far, is that I make a playlist and then I listen to that while I'm thinking about the book, not while I'm drafting it.
I really like the idea of using emotional touchstones, like songs as emotional touchstones that plot out the emotional arc of your book, but not necessarily the plot.
I mean, sometimes it's a bit confusing because it's a book I haven't finished writing yet, and maybe this is why, but I was like, oh, the playlist suggests that this character will betray this character at some point, but I don't know how or why. So
what you got to do then is put it on shuffle and find out how they're going to do it.
Oh yeah.
That's pure chaos energy. I love it.
It's got to be a treachery playlist somewhere.
Oh, surely.
Definitely. Have you ever put the playlists out there?
Actually on my website in the FAQ section. Not that it's at least 2 people have actually asked me if there's a playlist for Meet Me in Another Life, so I count that as frequent because people don't ask me many questions. So yeah, I've got the playlists linked there. I've got a playlist for each of the 2 main characters of Meet Me in Another Life because they have very different perspectives, so they needed very different playlists.
So whilst we're on Meet Me in Another Life, this is your debut novel.
It is, yes.
how sort of like do you want to just sort of walk us through like how you arrived at it? Like, was this an idea that you've been wanting to write for a while? Was it sort of
Not
like born in
really.
lockdown?
It was pre-lockdown. It was one of those that was sparked by a kind of thought experiment idea. I don't know what set me off on this train of thought, but I was thinking about how most of the people in your life, you know them sort of from one side. So you'll know a friend as a friend, you'll know your parents only as your parents. You won't kind of see the other sides of them that other people see. And that kind of led me to the question of, would it be possible in some sort of speculative framework for two people to know all of these different sides of each other if they lived multiple lives in which they related to each other in all these different ways? So that was the kind of thought side of it. And then usually with book ideas, I also get an image that comes to me quite strongly at the start. And so with this one, it was the idea that these characters started to follow each other through these lives, that they initially didn't remember each other, and then they started trying to kind of catch each other up. And there was an image of a young man at the deathbed of an old woman, and he was just like almost too late to find her in that life. And so that's kind of where it started. Yeah.
There's some almost like there's almost like a secret garden vibe to that. It just for me, there was just the way that you described that one image. I'm not saying that your book is, but
it's secret garden fanfic. Let's be honest.
I mostly just need to sit down now. That's it. I need to really think about myself. I'll never know Ben as a son.
But I know you as my daddy.
Wow. We're getting into something here.
Just swiftly sweeping that under the rug.
I'm gonna need a minute.
What have I done?
You've opened us up like a cantaloupe.
Right, so that's kind of your process for creating a book. You know, you're starting with your music, you get your images together. How do you know when the book you're writing is finished?
It never is. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. I try not to reread the published book, but sometimes if I'm skimming through, I'll be like, oh no, that's a bad sentence, or usually it's mostly on the sort of sentence level. That's the goal, is like not to have any glaring structural problems. That's yeah. It's like, is it fundamentally structurally sound? Are the sentences good enough most of the way through? I suppose that's the closest to done that a book can be for me.
And is that before you're willing to let an editor get their mitts on it?
Oh no, this is all after editing. It's a total mess before editing. Yeah, mm-hmm. I'm someone who really needs external input to know how to tell the story properly. I'm just a dunce at telling stories. So I'll make my first attempt, and then I'll get my edit letter, and it'll be like, so we think what you were trying to do is this, and here's how you could actually do that instead of whatever the hell it is you actually did. And I'll be like, yeah, you're completely correct. So I usually have to do a lot of rewriting, which is kind of a bit tedious, but it's also I also find it quite fun. So
so stop me if it's too sort of inside baseball, really. But how did you actually go about like procuring your book contract and getting the editor in the first place? As it's your debut novel, did you have to submit chapters or an entire first draft, or what was your experience?
The submission was all done by my agent. So I have had an agent since I remember, because it was shortly after the Brexit referendum, and I was depressed, and I saw I had an email in my writing inbox, which I keep kind of the emails aren't automatically visible to me unless I click on it, and I thought, well, that's going to be bad news because everything is terrible. And so I didn't look at it for several days, and then it was like my agent offering me representation. So I apologize for ignoring her email, but so for me, and for most writers these days, I think getting an agent was the first step. But Meet Me in Another Life was not actually the book that I signed with my agent for. So this was the second or third book that I'd written while I had her as an agent. She thought it was something that editors would be really interested in. But so it was a complete book that I worked on editorially with my agent first, and then she sent it out to editors that she thought would be interested in it. And yeah, it turned out some of them were, so that was great.
Wonderful. Oh, it's lovely to hear it sort of all come together. It sounds. Have you got a few novels that haven't progressed? Is that that must be is that a bitterness to that, or is that they'll be coming back in the future in other guises?
Some of them will be coming back. So yeah, some of them are drawer books, which I think everybody has.
Yeah, definitely.
One of them is a very, very overhauled and completely rewritten version of it is probably going to be my next book. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I had to do a lot of edits this time around, because it was a kind of maybe the second book that I'd finished. And so you could really tell. So I basically had to rewrite it from scratch. But some of them are going to stay in drawers, and that's fine. Some of them are just sort of, you have to practice before you get good, basically.
Do you ever go back through those drawer books? And I asked because I did this recently. I went back to something I wrote when I was quite a lot younger, and I absolutely despised the beastly little git that wrote that. Just reading it, I thought, what an insufferable tosser. I just wondered if other people have that sort of experience, or
definitely, yeah. At times, like with this book that I'm overhauling, it's attempting to be a comedy. Well, not like a complete out and out comedy, but it's supposed to be comedic. And yeah, some of the things that like 22-year-old me thought were extremely clever and fun. It's the trying to be clever. That's what I find with early books. I was always trying to be way too clever, and in a way that just didn't land. And yeah, that can be very cringe to have to reread.
I will say I will read what I found on Patreon. So if anyone's going to come and listen, you're going to hear my pain.
Oh wow, that's brave.
I might get Ben to read it.
Oh,
blind read it, hand it over and make you read it out.
Find some like 13-year-old prose from me and make you read it. Right. I just before we move on, I just need to say I really enjoy the way that you candidly talk about your process and writing and what you've been through in on your journey as a writer. I guess that's a bit of a wanky way to put it, but it's really cool to hear you just be very open about the things that have happened.
Well, I think there's a tendency, or at least when I was querying agents, all the stories I saw were kind of, I sent a query and then I got published like the next day. And I think that's because people like to share stories of success, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think there's room for some balance, and that it can be years, and it's normal for it to take years. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right, while we're on, still on your writing, what is the least enjoyable trope of fiction for you?
Oh, as in something that I don't like in other books.
Yeah, the immediate turn off when you hit it.
So I guess the obvious answer is reincarnation romance. So the entire book, Meet Me in Another Life, is basically about how much I don't like the reincarnation romance trope. And this actually came from, so I was reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, which I was really enjoying, and it's a wonderful book. I'm not saying anything, this is about me, not about the book itself. That it starts with this intriguing situation of this girl who lives in Prague, and she has like a guardian who's a demon and lives through a secret door, and I was really into it. And then it's revealed that she's the reincarnation of another character who had a romance with this hot angel dude. And then they just kind of resume the romance. And I just was like, no, I refuse to believe that someone who has no memory of that previous existence, who has had completely different life experiences, would therefore have the same relationship with someone that she was together with in another life. And that's another thing that, I basically wrote a book because I have beef with a trope.
But their souls are bonded.
I think you'll find that actually our experiences help form our characters.
Preposterous.
But I don't want to say it's a bad trope, because plenty of people really enjoy that trope, and I wouldn't want to harsh anyone's enjoyment. It's more about me, I think, than about the trope.
That's a pretty big axe to grind, that one, isn't it, to turn it into a novel?
Well, you need something to motivate you through all of the ups and downs of writing a book, and Bite is one possible.
I will also say we always pull quotes from the episodes to tweet out and to. I think the obvious answer is reincarnation romance. Maybe my favourite quote we will ever pull from this podcast.
I mean, it's the answer to so many things.
Yeah, for dinner, dear. Well, the obvious answer.
bit chewy.
Yeah, that would be pretty gross on a plate, actually.
No, you do like this meal. You liked it in your previous iteration.
Like so you ate it yesterday.
Right. If you could take any book and adapt it into another medium, what book would it be? To what medium? And why?
Oh, so I have an answer for this.
Ooh.
So the book is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mukhtar and Max Gladstone, which is an amazing, extraordinary novella about agents on opposite sides of the Time War who start by leaving taunting letters at the scenes of their victories over each other, and then gradually they fall in love, and this causes problems for their participation in the Time War. So I think that book would make an amazing concept album.
Ooh.
And specifically because it's told, so I think the two authors, each of them writes the letters from the perspective of one of the two agents, Red and Blue. I think two artists could collaborate, and half the songs could be by one artist and half the songs by another. And my personal picks would be Janelle Monáe to do Red's side of the story, because Red is from the kind of cyberpunk tech collective side in the Time War, and Joanna Newsom to do Blue's letters. So Blue is the kind of hippie garden commune side of the Time War. So that would be the more I describe it, the more I just really want it to exist now, and I know it will never exist, and it makes me sad.
That's a fantastic answer to that question.
That's the best answer I think we've had, because you were so ready with all of the details.
I've thought about it too much, so it's good to just get it out there, so it's not just living in my head anymore. Yeah, I think they're actually adapting it into a TV series, which will also probably be cool, but not as cool as the concept album.
I don't even have any follow-up questions to that.
There's nothing left to ask.
Yeah, it's so thorough.
Job done.
Yeah, nice.
All right, what's your next one?
Oh, fantastic.
So we've introduced you to some people. If they want to start reading your work, which I can imagine they would after that story, what should people start by reading?
I mean, I've got one book, so they would probably be well advised to pick up my one book, which is, Meet Me in Another Life, and the paperback came out in June, so it is now available in that format.
That's fantastic.
And it should be in bookshops, hopefully.
Yeah, it's being made into a movie as well, correct?
So the rights have been optioned. Sort of stuff is possibly happening. It's all a bit mysterious, the world of film.
NDA?
I don't have I did read the whole contract, but I can't remember if I have an NDA. No, but option basically means that there is a production company that is actively trying to put something together to make it into a movie, but it doesn't mean it's guaranteed to be made.
Are you in the kind of letters of intent stage?
Yeah,
Cool.
And it's very exciting, but I try not to get too sort of excited. But the fact that it's even at that stage is obviously really, really awesome. And I still don't really believe that it's a thing that happened.
So whilst not to overhype you, I should say to everyone listening, get in now, read it now, so that you can follow this all the way to its conclusion.
I thought you were going to say, so you could be one of those, actually, I read the book people.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
The scene is inaccurate. I mean, what I really hope, the ideal outcome for me would be if they make a film that is better than the book. That would make me so happy. Because I can, people always say, oh, the book was better. And I can think of some examples where I actually prefer the film. So Contact is one example where I think the story is just much more cleanly told, and like unified in the film version, and I would love it if they could clean up, the messy bits of the book and make it a really awesome film. That would make me really happy.
I tell you what, you've been a fantastic guest. Like normally, I need to sort of like think around it to try and like draw the rest of the answer out of sort of coax it out. But you just speak so sort of honestly and fluently in the way that you see the world. I love it, and your story was fantastic. So really, people do need to go and they need to find you and follow you on social media and read your novel and patiently await the next one, I'm sure. Exactly where can they find you?
So my website is catrionasilvey.com. And yeah, that's where you can find the playlists, among other things. I am on Twitter. My handle is SylvieCat. So I am technically also on Instagram, but I'm not really there. I have a presence, but it's a zombie presence. So yeah, Twitter or the contact form on my website is probably the best way to find me.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I've had an amazing time, and I love the whole shared story writing to a prompt. It's such a fun idea, and I had a great time, so thank you.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much. There we go. Catriona Silvey. Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?